back, relax, and maybe get yourself a snack. Me and you gonna have a little chat about books. Hey guys! So I'm here today to do a joint book review, 2 books, fantasy books that I have to tell you guys about. So the first one is Crossroads of Canopy, which is by Thoraya Dyer. I was sent this one by Tor for review and I read it and I haven't got around to reviewing it yet, so now is the time. And then the other one I have to show you is Blood Upon the Sand, which is by Bradley Beaulieu, and this is the second book in the Song of the Shattered Sand series. That's really hard to say, and it once again follows Cheda, who is the main character of 12 Kings. So I'm going to start off with Crossroads of Canopy. Crossroads of Canopy is a book that I really wanted to love, and I kind of did at points, and I didn't the rest of the time. It's a story that focuses on a world set in treetops. It's set in the canopy of a very, very large forest, a world that is essentially covered in forest. And we follow 3 different races, essentially, who live in this world. We have the Canopians, who live on the top of the canopy, the people who live in the understory, which is basically the in-between between the floor and the canopy. They live kind of under on the branches running around, that sort of lifestyle. And then we have the floor people. It sounds really cool as a concept, and then when you add in the fact that each of these societies has their own lifestyle, they have their own magic systems, and gods are very involved in the magic system of the Canopians, because people can work for the gods and goddesses and they can actually talk to gods and goddesses. They're sort of real life gods and goddesses who walk on the Canopian earth. And I think it's a really cool idea, and I think so many moments within this could have been really cool. My problem comes when you realise that this is a debut book, and it's quite obvious from the writing style that this is a debut, because to me it felt underdeveloped. And if you take a look at the page count, you can see that this is not a long book. It's quite short. I think it's less than 300 pages. And because of that, it suffered. And I don't often ask for books to be longer. I would much rather that they're shorter sometimes because there's too much description. But this book, I wanted it to be longer and I wanted it to be better developed. We follow a character called Una, and Una lives with her mother and father in the canopy. She's lived there all her life, and she had a younger sister when she was smaller who unfortunately fell from the canopy and died. So her parents are quite poor for Canopians. They don't really have a lot, and they're quite mean as parents as well. They don't really care about her too much. So what they do in the very beginning of this is decide that they're going to sell her away as a slave. However, Una overhears this conversation and decides she does not want to be sold into slavery. She would like to go and dedicate her life to a god or a goddess in order to hopefully gain powers or gain some sort of better lifestyle than being a slave. So she does this, she runs away, she pledges her life to a goddess, and when she gets there she sort of begins her story. She meets some other characters who become her friends. She also decides sometimes to sneak out and try and get away because she's quite bored with her lifestyle, and she kind of sneaks into understory a few times and meets other gods and goddesses down there too. And her story could have been really great, basically. I felt like there was a lot of potential with this world, a lot of things that could have really been pushed and made really cool. I think there was potential for some great visionary stuff in here with really beautiful descriptions, but we didn't really get very much of that. What we actually got was a fairly sexually driven character who is kind of coming into her own sexual desires and kind of finding out about romance and love and being free from her parents and getting magic and all sorts. And so we're sort of following a teenage girl who is driven by lust and love and doesn't really think, which is kind of annoying to me, because there were so many moments in this book that she made mistakes that could have been corrected if she just engaged her brain rather than thought with her heart or with her downstairs. So yeah, I didn't love the romantic elements of this at all. I thought they were pretty bad, and I didn't think that any of them added anything to the story. In fact, I felt it detracted from the story. So if we took all of the romance out of this book would be a much stronger story as a whole, And there are some elements that I think worked really well, and I do think the interaction of the two cultures of the understory people and the Canopians worked pretty well, and it made sense for the understory people to feel like slaves to the Canopians who live in sunshine and bask in sort of wealth. And I liked that relationship, and I thought there were good moments, but I just didn't feel like this was a solid enough story, and I didn't feel like the romance was anything good. Honestly, it was bad. It was pretty bad. There were some moments where she was having sex and they were talking about the penis as a trunk, which just didn't work for me in terms of this being a series of books set in the treetops and they're talking about penises as trunks. Like, no, don't do that, no. I gave this a kind of 2.5 or 3 stars overall. I would say it's got so much potential and it just didn't live up to it. It was kind of a disappointment for me, really. It's not a bad book, but it has bad moments to it, and romance is definitely one of those things. I'm interested in the second book, but I think I'm not going to pick it up unless people say it's a lot better. We'll see. It's a shame because I wanted to love this, but it just didn't work as well as I was hoping for, and yeah, I don't know if I'd recommend this one. I think there will probably come a time when another author writes a book set in the treetops of a canopy that is a lot better, and I hope that time is soon. If anyone knows a book like that, please do let me know in the comments. I would love to hear your opinions on this one if you've read it, or if you have any other books that are kind of set in similar landscapes but done better, because I'm sure there must be an author who's written a book series or a single standalone that is set in a world of treetops and it's better than this one. Please do let me know if you know any of those. So yeah, 2.5 or 3 stars for this overall. It's a decent read, but not a great one, and definitely has a lot of problems to it too. Now moving on to Blood Upon the Sand, which, as I say, it's the second book in the series. So I was a lot more hopeful going into this one, and this did not disappoint me. What I love about Bradley Beaulieu is that he has an ability to just draw me into his story. It doesn't really matter if I understand it as much as I want to or not, because I'll always understand it by the end, but yeah, he just draws me in. This is a world where the society we're following is in a desert, and it's called Sharakai. It's a city within a desert that's run by 12 kings, hence the name of the first book. These 12 kings are quite dominant. You can't really challenge them because they have bodyguards in the form of maidens who will cut you to pieces, behead you, hang you, draw and quarter you. They're pretty brutal. They're definitely brutal. And the kings themselves are pretty brutal as well. So it's a fairly rough life to live in Sharakai if you do something wrong, but it's also quite a prosperous and nice city if you are just a normal citizen living in that city. And if you are someone who can earn a living there, then you're going to probably do fairly well. We follow a main character called Cheda, who in the first book is a pit fighter, and she is growing up in the pit. She was orphaned quite young and her mother was killed by the kings, so she already has a vendetta against them. However, she doesn't really know the ins and outs of what happened with her mother. She doesn't exactly understand why her mother was killed and what happened to her, and what the intricacies of that were. So what she does is she decides she's going to try and investigate. She's also going to try and train herself up to be able to get revenge on the kings, and that's kind of what happens in the first book. And in this book we pick up her story when she has managed to infiltrate into the Maidens, and while she is there she is learning about what happens on the inner workings of the 12 kings and their lifestyle. She learns a lot more about the magic of this world, which is something that's hinted at a lot in book 1 and we see snippets of, but we don't really understand how it works too much, and this book is the story where we start to really understand how it works. One thing I will say about this book is that it's probably a little bit hard to get into, and it would benefit a lot from having a introduction of a few pages to kind of refresh your memory over what happened in book 1, or at least a character list so that you're kind of certain who everyone is, because this is the sort of book that has a lot of characters that you need to keep track of, a lot going on, and a lot of different political people, figures, places, different magical beings, that it's quite hard to keep track of if you've left it for a year or two between reading the books, which obviously is what you're going to do if the books haven't come out yet. So I think this book would have benefited from a character list, or at least a kind of recap at the beginning. However, if you have a good memory, which I would say I do when it comes to fantasy books, then you'll probably be able to remember who's who and what's what. If you don't, maybe it's worth reading some reviews of the first book to like refresh your memory. Basically, we follow Cheda in The Maidens. She's got a contact there who's hoping to teach her some stuff that she might need in order to betray them and take out the kings one by one. She also has a good friend called Emre who is in a different sect at the moment that we pick up this story. He is working with a different set of people for the same goal. They also want to take down the kings, but he's working with them and they kind of have different ideas about how to go about it, which is a slight shame because Emre and Cheda have always been the best of friends up until this point, and in this book they're not really together that much. They're sort of working towards what they both want in their own different unique ways. However, they do cross paths at some point. We're mostly following Cheda, although Emre's story does take priority at some points. And we're following her as she navigates the tides within the 12 Kings' courts, but we're also following a couple of different characters who are from a different kingdom. This kingdom is one that hopes to potentially make an ally of Sharakai and the kings. However, when magical demon characters get involved in their storyline, they wreak havoc and there is blood upon the sand in the desert in a very literal sense. This kind of scuppers any plans they might have had to make an ally with Sharakai, and that leads a third player into the game. So we've now got Cheda, we've got this other city, we've also got Emre, and we also have the kings themselves, and the magic that they are doing and the plots that they are devising is something that we're trying to constantly guess at, because we don't really know what their agenda is. We're sort of trying to uncover it and trying to discover it alongside Cheda, but we don't really know what they're working towards, so that kind of makes up a big part of this story. So overall, I think this is definitely a solid continuation. I really enjoyed it. I think it would have been better with a slight intro, as I say, but as a whole book, it worked really, really well, and I'm sure that if you had just read 12 Kings and then gone into this, it would have worked straight away. I would say that this is the sort of series that you're going to like if you like David Hare's books, if you like George R.R. Martin's books. Those sorts of books, you're probably going to like this, but it's a different setting with the desert themes, and it's definitely, he's a good writer when it comes to sort of building the atmosphere, building the surroundings, the world building generally. He's very good at that too. So we have great characters, we have strong world building, and it's generally a really fun book, I feel like, and a fun series. So I really enjoy it. I would definitely recommend it, and I actually gave this one a 4 out of 5 stars, so much better than the first book I just showed you, and I think if I was going to recommend one of them, it would 100% be this one over Crossroads. So do let me know in the comments below if you've read either of those books, what you thought of them, or if you're planning to pick them up. Thank you all for watching. I will see you very soon in another video. Bye!
Thank you for watching my video today. Go pick up a book, then come back and chat with me again.